U.S. President Donald Trump on Wednesday announced sweeping new tariffs on imports to the United States from countries around the world. The international reactions have been swift, with major economies speaking out against these measures. China has firmly expressed its opposition, saying it firmly opposes the new tariffs on its exports, vowing to take countermeasures to safeguard its own rights and interests. These tariffs include a particularly stinging 34% rate on China, one of its largest trading partners, as well as a 10% base tariff on all countries, which builds on the 20% tariffs imposed last month. China's Commerce Ministry argues that these tariffs do not comply with international trade rules, and it's urging the U.S. to immediately cancel them, warning that they could endanger global economic development.
加征关税，严重违反世贸组织规则，严重损害以规则为基础的多边贸易体制。中方对此坚决反对，将采取必要措施，坚定维护自身正当利益。
In Europe, the response has been equally strong. Ursula von der Leyen, the EU chief, called the tariffs a major blow to the world economy, adding that there seems to be no order in the disorder as all U.S. trading partners are hit. Following the 20% tariffs on EU exports to the United States, she said Brussels is preparing for further countermeasures, but emphasized that it's not too late to address concerns through negotiations.
Tariffs will also hurt consumers around the world. It will be felt immediately. Millions of citizens will face higher grocery bills. Medication will cost more, as well as transportation. Inflation will go up. It is not too late to address concerns through negotiations.
The German Automotive Industry Association also voiced concern, arguing that these tariffs would only create losers, and urging the EU to act with necessary force. The German chemical industry, which counts the United States as its largest export market, called for a level-headed approach, stressing that escalation would only make things worse. In Japan, Trade Minister Yoji Muto said the 24% tariffs on Japanese exports were extremely regrettable, urging Washington to reconsider. Japan's chief cabinet secretary also pointed out that these tariffs may contravene World Trade Organization rules and the trade treaty between the U.S. and Japan.
今般の措置をはじめ、米国政府による広範な貿易制限措置は、日米両国の経済関係。
India too has been affected. Head of Federation of Indian Export Organizations Ajay Sahai told AFP that the tariffs would hurt demand for Indian exports, especially since they were higher than expected. However, he also pointed out that countries like China and Vietnam have been hit harder, which might open up opportunities for India to gain market share. The UK has stated that it will remain calm and committed to securing a trade deal with the US that could help mitigate the 10% tariff imposed on British exports. However, Business Minister Jonathan Reynolds emphasized that the UK has a range of tools at our disposal and will not hesitate to act if necessary.
Let me be clear with the House. A trade war is in nobody's interest, and the country deserves, and we will take, a calm, pragmatic approach. That's why constructive talks are progressing to agree a wider economic prosperity deal with the US.
The best relationship is based on a long history of mutual respect and partnership, and that has not changed. It holds immense value, not just for businesses at home, but across the Atlantic too, supporting 2.5 million jobs across both of our nations. Our engagement with the current administration has been constructive and pragmatic, and this will not stop. We will continue our talks to secure a deal in the national interest, emphasising the fair and balanced trading relationship that we enjoy and want to continue. We also remain resolute in our support for UK industry and will continue our engagement with businesses as we determine our next steps. Whether it's with the US, the EU, India, the Gulf, or our friends across the Pacific, this government will always ensure the UK faces towards the world.
In France, President Emmanuel Macron has called for a meeting with representatives of sectors impacted by these tariffs, while in Italy, Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni criticized the new U.S. tariffs on EU imports, warning that a trade war would inevitably weaken the West. She believes the introduction of tariffs from the US is a wrong measure that doesn't benefit either side. Over in Canada, Prime Minister Mark Carney expressed concern that these tariffs will fundamentally change the global trading system, and vowed to fight back with countermeasures, saying, "We are going to protect our workers." Similarly, Brazil's Congress approved a so-called economic reciprocity law in response to the 10% tariffs on exports from Latin America's largest economy, which is the second largest exporter of steel to the United States after Canada.
President Trump has just announced a series of measures that are going to fundamentally change the international trading system. We're going to fight these tariffs with countermeasures. We are going to protect our workers.
South Korea has also voiced its concerns, with acting President Han Duck-soo stating that a global tariff war has become a reality. Following Trump's 25% tariffs on imports from South Korea, Han called an emergency task force, vowing to use all government resources to minimize the damage through aggressive negotiations. Australia's Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has said the tariffs were not the act of a friend, adding that they would damage the close relationship between the two countries. He called them totally unwarranted, but made it clear that these tariffs were not unexpected.
We will concentrate our pan-governmental effort on negotiations with the United States to minimize damage to our economy and prepare the best response strategies in collaboration with the private sector through the Economic Security Strategy Task Force.
The unilateral action that the Trump administration has taken today against every nation in the world does not come as a surprise. For Australia, these tariffs are not unexpected, but let me be clear, they are totally unwarranted.
Switzerland, which has also been hit by a 31% tariff, is assessing its next steps, with President Karen Keller-Sutter stressing that respect for international law and free trade are fundamental. Meanwhile, in Poland, Prime Minister Donald Tusk emphasized that friendship means partnership, and that partnership should be reciprocal, suggesting that both sides need to engage in fair trade. The United States has also imposed a 37% tariff on imports from Bangladesh, citing what it sees as unfair trade practices. The country's heavy reliance on garment exports to the US has put it in a precarious position, with concerns that these tariffs could erode its competitive edge. Additionally, India and Pakistan have been affected by new tariffs of 26% and 29%, respectively. Trump explained that Pakistan has been charging the US a 58% tariff on American goods, prompting the US to impose a 29% tariff on Pakistani exports. These tariffs have sparked a wave of international reactions, with many countries now facing serious challenges to their economies and global trade relations. The question remains, will these tariffs lead to further escalation, or could they prompt new negotiations for better trade terms?